Everyone should be able to hear me.
Yes, you're good.
Okay. So welcome everyone to our lunchtime learning webinar series. I just want to check because someone does have a question. Yes, you can hear me. Great. So hopefully you couldn't hear me when I was trying to figure everything out 10 minutes ago. Anyway, welcome to our webinar series. If you joined us in our supported decision making part 1, this is a 4-part series. So this is part 2 of the 4-part series. My name is Dawn Monaco, and I am one of the co-directors of the grant Reach for Transition here at SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. This series, I am collaborating with Maine Parent Federation. Executive Director Carrie Woodcock is joining me, as well as Dylan Campbell, who is a trainer and youth coordinator at the Maine Parent Federation. So just a few housekeeping issues. This is being recorded and it will be housed on our website, on the SPAN website's Reach for Transition page. And if you should have any, all you have to do is go to the SPAN website, and underneath programs, you'll find Reach for Transition. Everyone is muted for this webinar so that there is no interruptions. When you need to ask a question, you can put it in the questions box. If you need accommodations and cannot put your question in the box, we can unmute you, and then you could ask your question verbally. So also, I just wanted to show the next screen. Whoops, sorry. There we go. So this is what your dashboard should look like on this GoToWebinar platform. The orange arrow, if you click that, it'll minimize, and then you can see the full screen. If you need to get it back to type into it, you just kind of hit the orange again. And then this just shows what the question box looks like if you need to ask a question. So I am going to begin. I'm going to share, I'm going to switch screens with Dylan because he'll be sharing the his PowerPoint. So let me just do that. I'm going to change the presenter, and it's now Dylan. And so Dylan, you can go ahead and show the PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. So again, this is part 2 of a series. This supported decision making part 2 is we're going to be discussing incorporating skills into the IEP. Part 1, which is recorded and on our website, was about explaining what supported decision making is and how you can build those skills from a young age moving up. So go ahead, Dylan. You have to advance the slides. Great. So we're just going to review a little bit the first couple of slides again on what supported decision making is. So this is a less restrictive option and an alternative to guardianship. You probably hear guardianship all the time with regard to our young adults with disabilities, but we want people to know that there is other options. So it's a way for people with disabilities to get more support and to make their own decisions. We really believe that it's a civil right for them to be able to make their decisions. And we want them to be the ultimate decider. And what they do is they pick trusted family members, friends, or staff to be their support people. And again, we discussed that in detail in part 1. But it is a fancy way of just stating something that we all do every day. Every person wants to be able to make their own choices and has a right to make their own decisions. And we all ask for support when we make decisions in life. So people with disabilities really are no different than that. So then this is a term that we also talk about a lot, which is self-determination. And people who are self-determined know what they want and how to get it. They advocate on their own behalf, and they're involved in solving problems and making decisions about their lives. So again, part 1, we really talked about what kind of skills you can teach, but now we're going to talk about, as the student ages. If there are needs and they're not, there's a need in an area, we want to talk about how you can incorporate that into the IEP. So Dylan, why don't you go ahead? I think you're going to do the next 3 slides. Again, Dylan Campbell is with the Maine Parent Federation, and he's a trainer and a youth coordinator. So welcome, Dylan.
Hi, thank you, Dawn. So we have a quote here from the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making, and it says that students who have self-determination skills are more likely to successfully make the transition to adulthood, including improved education, employment, and independent living outcomes. So self-determination is really believing that you can control your destiny, your own future. It's the attitude that leads people to set their own goals for themselves and then take the initiative to achieve those goals. So in order to become self-determined, you really have to self-advocate for yourself. And we have a video here of a young man that I've been lucky to work with over the past year. His name is Jordan, and he's a self-advocate. And lately, he's been getting quite the experience as a public speaker. He has autism, but he sees it as a gift. He knows that it's a part of who he is, so he recognizes those strengths and uses them the best to his advantage. So I simply asked him a couple of questions if he would talk about how he's been self-advocating for himself, and this is what he had to say.
I'm 16 years old, and I've lived in Maine for most of my life. I have a type of autism, but it's actually a good thing because it actually makes me remember things that other people do. Speaking up for myself is very important because it makes sure that I actually am heard and respected, and a lot of people are hearing that what I'm doing is very important. I started in Special Olympics because we were doing a few activities through, and it was very fun, and I wanted to be part of the whole family and community. First place ribbons and second place medals. And I really enjoy this because it's something that I have been doing for a long time. I've always loved doing bowling, and I've taken swimming lessons twice and really enjoy it. I spoke from Special Olympics by behalf of the school committee, and I honestly felt very nervous doing this, but I was actually incredible doing it, and I was a lot better than I thought I was going to be. IEP is not just reaching about my goals, but it's also for what I'm going to have for the future. My goals are not just in school, but also from other things as well, like helping out others when they need it, or cheering on people when they don't feel supportive, or just being a good person in general. I have extended time because it makes me feel a little bit better. I have shortened assignments to make me more focused and confident. I complete assignments in RISE because a lot of other classes just have people that are loud and make me feel a little, I don't know, just worried. And I just want to have some place where it's more quiet so I can focus. All I can think of is how I could make it better, and I just say what I can, and it just brings up.
Been attending his IEPs with us now since I think 9th grade. Before, we would sit with the teachers and the principals and myself and form goals for him that we thought were realistic. And since he's been sitting in, he's had a voice and he's spoken up and said, I talked to my teachers and I feel like I can't do that. So we've been able to break them into steps and make his goals a shorter amount of time and he feels more comfortable. I feel like he's really done well this year. He's achieving all of his goals.
I wanted to do this video to inspire a lot of people, not just in Maine, but from around the world as well, to make sure that they're not alone, that they think that they can't do it. But all they have to do is just have a little inspiration, and sooner or later, they'll just learn that they can do it. And they just need a little bit of a starter just to learn that. Okay. All I can say is don't give up. Keep trying.
So Dylan, I just want to mention, first of all, I love that video and I think it's amazing to listen to Jordan. And for those attending the webinar, it might be daunting to see everything that Jordan does, but we're gonna, as we move forward, talk about small steps that can take place, because ultimately what we want is for our young people to lead their IEP, but everybody's at different levels. So we're going to talk about small steps to get to that point. So thanks, Dylan. That was wonderful. Go ahead.
And it all really begins with self-advocacy. So Jordan wouldn't be where he is today if he wasn't comfortable with saying, this doesn't work for me. What else can we do? So it all really becomes stems back from self-advocacy. And that's really just the ability to understand your needs, to be able to get those needs met. And by using assertive communication, you build self-advocacy. So there are 3 main steps to building self-advocacy. You really have to understand yourself and your disability. You need to know your strengths, weaknesses, and needs. And then you need to learn how to ask for what you need.
So next we're going to hear from Carrie Woodcock. As I mentioned, she's an executive director at the Maine Parent Federation, and we've been collaborating for a while on this series. So again, welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. I would also just add that I'm a parent of 2 children with special healthcare needs. My son has dyslexia and ADHD, and my daughter has Down syndrome. My son did have an IEP and now has a 504 plan, and my daughter currently has an IEP. So everything that I'm speaking to you about today, I practice actively with my children. And so one of the biggest goals for youth with disabilities is for them to understand themselves and their disability. And I can say this is probably more difficult for my son than it has been for my daughter so far. Although my daughter we talked to her a lot about Down syndrome, and I think she understands some of her challenges. I think with my son, with his ADHD and dyslexia, it's more of an invisible disability, and he's had a hard time identifying and speaking to what he needs within classes, especially since he entered high school this year. So I think with individuals who might have what's perceived as an invisible disability, where it's not outwardly obvious that they might be a little bit more behind their students, their typically developing peers, self-identifying and having confidence in your ability to self-identify and knowing the route in which you're going to self-identify really helps to build those self-advocacy skills, increases their self-determination and their self-confidence to the point where they can actively participate in their IEPs or in their 504 plans and advocate for what they need so they can be successful in school. So making sure that you're having active conversations with your child or the student or young adult about what their disability is and how it affects their ability to learn or communicate with their teachers and their peers. Having those open conversations at home are the best ways to increase the self-confidence and awareness around their disability. And parents can use evaluations and assessments to help their children to identify what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and the accommodations and modifications that they can ask for to overcome their weaknesses. Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay. So
no, I mean switch screens. Sorry. No, just switch slides.
Okay.
Maybe it was just a minute behind. So knowing your strengths, weaknesses, and needs. And I think this is difficult for all of us. It's really hard for us as human beings to understand what our weaknesses are and acknowledge our weaknesses. But one of the things that we can do is by understanding what our weaknesses are, but also what our strengths are, is we can help our children or young adults to identify how they can use their strengths to address some of their weaknesses and meet their needs. So assisting your child in being able to identify their strengths and weaknesses is really important. And again, you can use some of the assessments or just using their current work from school to understand what was difficult. Was it difficult to sit and pay attention? Is it difficult to take notes? Is it difficult to read the book you're being asked to read? Is it difficult to attend for a 30-minute period, 60-minute periods? When kids get in high school, sometimes they're 90-minute periods. So understanding where the difficulties lie and how they can use some of their strengths, which might be speaking up for themselves, to get that need met. So make sure they understand what is available to them and how they can access it. Sometimes, a lot of children now in schools will have their own iPads or their own computers. So for my son, one of the biggest tools he uses is his email. Instead of having to raise his hand and ask for what he needs in class, what he'll do is he'll email his teachers. And that helps him so that he doesn't look different from his classmates. For my daughter, who's a little bit younger, using sign language to ask for a break, even though she's perfectly verbal, she was having a hard time verbalizing asking for a break in an appropriate manner. So her ed tech was keeping eyes on during class, and she was just using the sign break. We did create a break card. She didn't want to use that, but using the sign break was meeting her needs better. So it was just identifying where she was able to communicate better, having her understand that she needs a break because she's tired or fatigued or lacking the ability to concentrate, and being able to access that where her strengths were. And you can practice this at home as well as in school. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can write these skills into IEP goals so that we're practicing them at school as well. Their needs may be higher than their peers, but by using their strengths to embrace those differences, they will be successful, and they'll be able to close the gap a little bit between themselves and their typically developing peers. Learning how to ask for what you need. So we do this a lot with parents, but it works for youth too. And it's being able to identify when you're being passive, when you're being aggressive, and when you're being assertive. And we always try to get youth and young adults as well as parents to identify their assertive voice. So once you know what works for you and you know how to speak up and let others know what you need to be successful, the most important step is to identify your assertive voice and ask for what you need in an assertive voice. So we identify passive as allowing yourself to be run over and becoming a spectator instead of a participant. And you may feel like your needs are never being met. You're always doing what people are requiring you to do instead of what you think you need to do or would like to do. Aggressive would be running over those who want to help you by demanding action without considering any other thoughts or ideas. And it may temporarily get your needs met, but in the long term, it's not going to get those needs met. So assertive is the middle ground, and it's where we allow ourselves to calmly and with data ask for what we need, while also taking into consideration other ideas which may work. This is the best way to consistently get your needs met. So this would be the next step after working with your young adult about how to talk about their disability and what they need, and then how to take that knowledge and that data to assertively ask for what you need and find the best method to do that with your teachers and your peers. So building self-advocacy skills should happen early and within individual education programs. So in part one, we discussed the importance of building skills towards independence and beginning earlier. So 2 areas where you can include self-advocacy goals within an IEP would be in the accommodations and by writing them into some social and emotional goals. So we've provided you with an example. Given the opportunity, Johnny will identify when he needs a break by using kind words, signing, or his break card to ask to go for a walk. Or a more advanced request that you may see within a middle school or high school would be, Johnny will identify when he needs extended time to complete a test, quiz, classroom homework, or project, and will communicate with his teacher verbally or through email to request extended time. So these are goals that can be written right into an IEP to help build a child's self-advocacy skills. With Sammy, we started self-advocacy skills in attendance at our IEP meetings in first grade. So they can be very, very simple goals that can be written starting early. And then as they get older, you start adding more responsibility to the individual to take ownership of their goals and their needs by making them ask for their accommodations or modifications, or having them request at IEP meetings what type of accommodations and modifications do they feel fits their needs best, and making them, providing them with the ability to access those in multiple different ways, which can be written into IEPs.
And Carrie, I would also mention that we know that transition begins at age 14 and that they have to be legally invited to IEP meetings. But we really recommend that you bring your child and student into IEP meetings as early as possible, because it's really important for them to know, first of all, that everyone meets on their behalf every year. But it really does begin their advocacy journey when they actually attend the IEP meetings at a young age. So even if they're only there for a little bit of time, at least they're there, and they can understand that they're a part of the process. And they could, hopefully we could ask them questions, and then they could speak up and talk about what they're struggling with.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more, I think, about it as we get further into the webinar, about what my experience has been with Sammy.
Yes.
Dawn's experience has been with her son, who
Absolutely.
has.
But I wanted to mention that they don't have to wait until 14 to be at meetings.
Right. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes. So self-determination goals, we can also include them in the IEP. And the goals and objectives are related to self-determination. So for every goal, there can be an application of self-determination in order to get to that. And we call them I statements in the IEP goals and objectives to get the student involved and for accountability. I'm going to show some examples. So I will identify and appropriately ask for when I need to have a break. Or I will develop a plan for reducing the number of times I am late to class. So these are examples of, so a student that needs a break, a student that is maybe a behavioral goal, whereas they're being late to class. And I will identify my areas of interest, and then we'll explore paid work experiences with the vocational rehabilitational counselor. So, and that's for an older student when they are in high school. So all of this can also apply to life skills and employment skills and independent skills and post-secondary education skill, things needed for post-secondary education. So it's really important to understand that it's not just for students that are younger, it goes all the way up into high school. Oh, okay. So we're talking about this here too. Sorry. Well, let's state it.
No,
again.
it's all right. It was.
I forgot we were going to
it
talk
was a
about
good
it
way
here,
to.
but it's important to continue to say this. So.
Yeah. So we give you the age that IDEA states that they must be invited by 14. Some states by 16, but some states it's 14. For example, in Maine and New Jersey. We obviously recommend the earlier the better. You can prepare for the meeting ahead of time, both at home and at school. And school can work on skills to help the student prepare for and attend the meeting. So it's one of the most important things a student can do to advocate for themselves. It's really one of the first areas outside of the home where the student is promoting their ability to advocate for what they need and build some of those self-determination skills. We do it at home by asking them for, involving them in the choice for dinner, or involving them in, in the early ages, a choice for family game night. So giving them some of that control in the younger years at home, but then empowering them to have some control at school as well. So I had mentioned we started Sammy early on. We started her in first grade, and it started with just me saying that she was going to attend a meeting for her education. And what we did at school was we picked out a book that Sammy enjoyed reading, and she practiced at school to come into the meeting and not only read the book, but lead the meeting by reading the page, showing the pictures, and asking if there were any questions. You know, the book was like 10 pages long. It probably took a total of 20 minutes. Sammy loves the spotlight, so it played right into her being able to be the leader. And the team, it started the meeting, the team was able to get a good read on what Sammy was able to do. So it gave them sort of a quick view of her present level of performance besides just looking at assessments. And it also was a positive interaction. It gave them the opportunity to ask her questions and answer so they could understand if she comprehended what she was actually reading. And she made us laugh. So it started the whole meeting on a lighter note. And then she went back to class and we discussed her goals. As we progressed through the intermediate years and into middle school, we're now having her prepare an actual written assignment for the IEP meeting. So she still knows that she's going to be attending a meeting for her education, and she picks a topic that she would like to write about, and usually it'll be incorporated into one of her classes. So it will be probably, you know, her most favorite class, which right now is math class, which we're not sure why, but math is her favorite. So she'll do a piece of work that is incorporated into a specific subject matter, and then they work with her on how she's going to present that to the group to show what she's accomplished. So in the past, it's included projects that she did on David Ortiz. Last year, it was a poem that she had written for a book that the entire 5th grade class published. She came in and presented that. So it's basically working to present one of her areas of strengths, and she comes in and she still leads the meeting for that period of time. She talks about how she prepared the piece of work. So talks about when she would work on it, what she would use to work on it. So sometimes it would be, you know, I use my computer or my iPad, or I use this program, so she understands the programs that she's using to work on it. Then she'll read the piece of work and then she'll take questions. So we haven't quite gotten to the point with her yet about asking for her accommodations and modifications or understanding the goals that she needs. But what we're doing is we're showing the team what her abilities are. We're also showing the team the tools that she's using to get to that level. And then we're allowing her to lead and have a voice and build those self-determination and self-advocacy skills. As we move up through the transition years, our goal is for her to be able to do a completely student-led IEP, but those are the steps that we're taking as a family. And I'll let Dawn speak to some experiences she's had with her son because he's fully transitioned.
Yes, so my son is actually 21 now. He's in his last year of school. He'll leave the school district in June. But what we did when we started this process when he was in transition. So when he first started out at 14 and 15, we had him prepare for his meetings. So early on, it was a matter of my school district had a one-to-one computer, Chromebook. So we had him open his Chromebook, start a document, and tell us what his favorite class was. And he would tell us, and we said, okay, type that. Tell me 3 things you like about that class. And he wrote 3 things, was able to type 3 things about that class. And then when we attended the meeting, he presented this document and he read it to them and he told them what he likes and what he doesn't like. Then once he was getting older and he started work experience in school, we did the same thing with the work experiences in internships. Which work experience did you like? Why do you like that work experience? Tell us 3 reasons why. Which work experience did you not like? Why not? And then he would come into the meeting prepared with that document and tell the team what he likes and what he doesn't like with regard to work. So, and he took a lot of pride in that and enjoyed it. And it was a great way for him to understand that his opinion and his interests really matter. And then as he aged, we now, at 21, practice supported decision making with him. And we are able to, I have been able to transition from parent to support person. And I can talk a little bit more about that when we're finished with the whole webinar.
And I think what's important to remember in this participation that we understand and acknowledge that not every student can go in and present in person, that there may be a student that would rather create a video of themselves, or, we had the example of a PowerPoint presentation. Even if they can't come in and present it, or writing a letter, So there's different ways for a child to participate in their IEP. If they don't have the ability to come in and do it in person, if they have some inhibitions around doing that, it's about meeting the student where they're at, and that can be written right into the IEP. So it becomes part of their curriculum, and then you're using their accommodations and modifications to be able to encourage them to participate at the level that they are able to participate at. We don't want this to become a negative experience for them. We want this to be a positive experience for them. We want their inclusion to include self-advocacy skills that is going to increase their self-determination and ultimately their self-confidence.
Yeah, that was a nice, Carrie. So the
Yeah.
student-led IEP is most often seen during the transition years, but as we keep mentioning, it's so important for that student involvement at a young age. So when the student leads their IEP, they actually engage in self-determination. They have a voice and determine their IEP goals and what they're addressing at the IEP. This gives them the empowerment that their voice actually matters. They also practice different decision-making methods in a safe environment. And this is a good opportunity to practice the use of their assertive voice. And when the student leads the meeting, they bring their thoughts, goals, and concerns to the table, which are addressed by the IEP team. So in Jordan's case, he actually made a PowerPoint to lead his IEP team. I like the way Carrie had mentioned earlier, he wasn't comfortable going into his IEP meeting and just talking. He made a PowerPoint that he had sat down with his teacher and made, so he was able to rehearse it after school and everything in practice, because he was just a bit too nervous to get up there in front of everyone. And he was talking about, in the video, he was talking about what worked best for him when he was in RISE, because RISE is a way that he was able to get his work done in his least restrictive environment. And when he told people that,
Dylan, can you explain what RISE is? Sorry.
Yeah, so RISE is a group, and it's the school's ADA program, and they really just kind of assist with them in their least restrictive environment. So if a student needs an accommodation, they kind of, RISE is kind of the program that brings that accommodation to them. So Jordan actually, he gets his most of his classes in the mainstream classroom, but when he has say a certain subject as math, is when he had mentioned to me, he can't do with the extra noise. He needs a place that's quiet so he can be more focused. So he actually went to his IEP meeting and had mentioned that this wasn't working out for him. He needed to be in a quieter space, and RISE was the way to allow him to have that space. So Jordan actually self-advocated to get that need met.
And he learned about himself, which is something that Carrie, I can't remember if Carrie mentioned it earlier, that it's really important for you to understand yourself and how you it affects your ability to learn. And he knows that about himself.
Exactly.
Another thing about the student-led IEP too is that it's important to let the student know, just like parents, that they're able to invite certain individuals to the table at the IEP as well. But they do need to understand that there are certain members of the team that have to be at the table. And sometimes, just like with parent IEPs, this can lead to contention due to challenging relationships. So certain relationships within the school are better for the student than other relationships, but certain members of the team need to be at the table. So this is a perfect opportunity for the school and the student and the family to try to solve that outside of the IEP meeting and come to a resolution and use the skills to build their abilities to self-advocate for why does that person make you uncomfortable? Why do you not want them to attend? And the ability to compromise with the school to find something that will work. So perhaps, the student comes in and leads the IEP for a certain part of time, and then the individual needs to attend so the student can agree to leave the IEP at that time. So it goes right back to meeting the student where they're at and encouraging them to voice their concerns in an assertive manner and respecting that and trying to find resolutions that can happen outside of the IEP meeting so that the IEP meeting doesn't actually become contentious.
Yeah, so that leads us to this. How do you start? So just like we've been telling parents, like Carrie just mentioned, We've been telling parents for years that you're an equal member of the IEP team, and we've been advocating for our students for years. So eventually we want to move over to let them do that. Of course, we're not going to step out of the way because we're going to support them. But we all should use our assertive voice, parents and students, to work with the IEP team to make sure that all of these are included in the IEP. Develop self-determination, self-advocacy, and decision-making skills into the IEP. And I just would like to say that if you're given a hard time about this, and you know, we've been saying bring your students to IEP teams as early as possible. So if anyone should say why, or they're in a certain class now, we don't have someone to bring them to it, whatever the excuse may be, you are building their self-advocacy skills. That is extremely important. And I think if you use that, you shouldn't get pushback on that. But aside from that, all IEP goals should be individualized to meet the student where they are at. And Carrie mentioned this as well. Everybody's different. What she's doing with her daughter Sammy to get her to build her self-advocacy skills, may be different than what you're going to do with your youth, because they're all at different levels. But the important thing is that you're working on it. Okay. So person-centered planning is that's something that you will hear. It's usually a state-based service term. A lot of times you'll hear that in adult services when they move out of the school district. So we usually hear it, in those. However, we really believe, as we've been really stating throughout this, that the foundations that are built on person-centered planning should be used in the IEP as well. It focuses on the person and their needs by putting them in charge of defining the direction of their lives, not on the systems that may or may not be available to serve them. So it enhances dignity and self-determination of individuals. We really, really want to stress that it's about them. So when we say to them, what do you want to do when you leave high school? We have to listen to them, because nothing about them without them. Now, they may not know, so we want to give them the information, as much information as we can, so that they can figure it out. And that goes back to all the internships, as I mentioned. Internships, if work is what they're going to do, they have to job sample and do some internships, because they don't know what they don't know. So we want to give them as much information as we can to help them make decisions and support them in those decisions. So using person-centered planning in the IEPs, your child determines and communicates their preferences. So just like we voice when we as parents are in IEP meetings and we voice different things that we think will work for our students and our children, then they can. I mean, we're going to ask them what is working for you and what is not working for you, and give them choices for their education and have it reflected in the IEP. The preferences and choices determined by person-centered planning process are honored, unless they're harmful to the individual, of course, or they violate school, local, state, or federal policy and law. And this process is more reliable and successful than having a decision made by a team that does not include the individual's voice or the input. Basically, we want to honor everything that they say. And so, I talk about this a lot. I have a coworker whose son loves basketball, and he has a physical disability. And if you ask him what does he want to do after he leaves school, he could say to you, I want to be an NBA basketball player. So, that might not be realistic for him, but he loves basketball. So let's listen to his love of that sport. What can we do now based on his interest in that? And how can we turn that into something that he can do when he leaves school? Carrie, did you want to add to this?
No, I mean, I think you've got. I think the opportunity, if the individual is expressing a choice that violates the school, local, state, or federal policy, or might be harmful for them, it's a perfect opportunity to pull the supported decision-making team together, to be able to have the conversation with the youth as a team, so that they can understand why their preference is not something that can be accomplished, but doing it in a way in which you're not just saying no, you're providing the resources for that individual or that young adult to be able to look at the decision and walk away understanding why that cannot happen, instead of feeling restricted by their team.
Right. So you've heard us talk about how supported decision making is an alternative to guardianship. So what we have done is we've attached a form in the handout section, which is a supported decision making form, because as you know, when the student turns 18, they are adults in the eyes of the law, and so technically, parents don't have to be invited to IEP meetings at that point. So if the student fills out that form and puts the name of all the support people they want at all meetings and then signs it and gives it to the district, that goes in the file, and then those people will be invited to the meetings and continue to be a part of the team and will be involved in communication from the school and school materials. So when you're using these least restrictive options, instead of full guardianship, you want to make sure that your child does that, fills out that form and gives it to them. You want the district to know that you're going to be doing supported decision making. And if you want to seek power of attorney forms for different healthcare or other financial issues, you can do that as well with the supported decision making. So it's in combination with supported decision making. There are also some states that do have limited guardianship options. It depends. I know in New Jersey we do, so you'd have to look into your state to see if that's an option. But I think it's important. A lot of school districts don't understand or really are just hearing about supported decision making. And a lot of times parents will be told by their school district, you have to seek guardianship of your child. And you don't have to do that. There are options, and we want parents to understand that there are options.
It's important that when you're using the options, even if you're using a guardianship arrangement, that you're making sure, and oftentimes, this point has to be hammered home with parents, but we as parents always expect the school to communicate with us 1,000%, but then in turn, we might not be doing our fair share of communicating what's going on at home. So whatever options you decide to explore and use with your young adult, it's really important to make sure that that's communicated with the school. If you want them to respect your decisions, you obviously have to make them aware of your decisions. And some people might just be using supported decision making without any of these tools, which means that you might not get the invite to go to your child's IEP, but then it falls on your child's shoulders to make sure that they know at the IEP meeting, my mom and dad, or I'm inviting my mom and dad to the meeting. Or you might be using a release in order to make sure that you're still getting invited to the IEP meeting. But whatever you're exploring and doing, you got to make sure that the school is aware of what you're doing and that the entire supported decision-making team knows what you're doing, so that they can make sure there are checks and balances to make sure bases are covered and meetings aren't missed in which your child wants you to be present.
Right. So as I mentioned, part one, which we did in September, is on the REACH page on the SPAN website, and we've provided the link here, and we've provided it in the chat box. So if you missed that, please go ahead and check that out. It's been captioned as well in both English and Spanish, if that's a need. We will do the same to this one and put it up on that site. And we'll also be working on part 3, and we'll be disseminating that information after the new year.
And part 3 is going to provide more information about working with your medical provider around supported decision making.
Yeah.
So when we hear from parents, we hear that schools and medical providers are the two areas that are referring parents to full guardianship. So here in Maine, there's a lot of work being done with those providers to educate them on what supported decision making is so that they're not automatically referring families. But the medical provider can be something that's, school is difficult, but when it comes to health, which has more life or death decisions, especially medical management, medicine management, parents have a harder time letting go of that. So, and medical providers, as much as schools are unaware, medical providers are even more unaware. So it's going to be just a webinar on educating your medical provider, but how you can work with them to use supported decision making within that system of care.
Yes. So in conclusion, some of the things that we went over today were helping your young adult find and use their assertive voice, and we talked about what that is. Communicate with the school on your intention to use supported decision making. Work with your young adult on how to participate and lead their IEPs, and we've talked about different ways that that can take place. And you're using the same tools in adulthood that you are practicing in their IEP meetings with the person-centered planning. So I'd like to open it up at this point to see if you have any questions. I guess you can put them in the chat box or in the questions box. I don't know. We'll get them either way. So whatever you'd like to do. And also, if you are using supported decision making and you have information to share, we'd love to hear that as well. Or if you have a young adult who's led their own IEP meetings or in the process of doing that, happy to hear about that.
While they do that, Dawn, do you want to take the opportunity to talk about evals?
Yes. So thank you, Carrie. So
yep.
We have put the link to an evaluation in the chat box. Everything we do, because we are grant funded, we need to evaluate all our work, and plus evaluating it will help give us information on our next, on what worked for you and what didn't work for you on this webinar. So there's a link here in the chat box, and if you hit that, it's really 4 simple questions and then an area for you to comment. So please, we ask that you do fill out that evaluation because we really want to hear about how this helped, and we want to hear your thoughts. So Tanya says, would you mind giving a few more examples of goals and objectives and how they can be met? So I'm trying to think of what we could do. Carrie, do you have any off the top of your head? I mean, we talked about, accommodations and modifications. So if a student knows, if there's, oh gosh.
I would get maybe get a little bit more advanced if you want to talk about like working with a transition plan, and where a student has to identify goals for employment. A lot of times working with an interest inventory. So maybe a first step would be I will work with my guidance counselor or identifying a teacher or maybe a voc rehab counselor to complete 3 interest inventories and have conversations about exploring a paid work experience.
Right.
And transition plans can be revisited. Well, IEPs can be revisited anytime. So you could move on either within that goal or within a second goal. I will work towards, based on my interest inventories, I will work towards working with my vocational rehabilitation counselor to set up a paid work experience for summer of 2020. And so those are, specific transition-based goals around paid work experiences, which is a big push right now within most states. And Maine, I know it's a huge push, but I know WIOA is pushing for paid work experiences because of the skills it helps these individuals to achieve. It puts them in an employment opportunity outside of their schools. So it puts them in a business type world where they have to maybe dress a certain way and act a certain way, but it's also identified to be an area of interest so that they can explore if that's an area of interest they really want to pursue. And it also gives them a paycheck, which forces them to budget. So
Right.
those goals should really be written by the student. Transition plan goals, identifying independent living goals, those should be conversations that are happening with the student and their supported decision-making team, as well as their IEP team, and should reflect what the student wants. And so their voices
Yeah.
should be heard. It might be that I'm going to live at home with my parents until I have a paid work experience, or I'm going to live at home with my parents, and I'm going to participate in paying for, my television, my cable bill, or something like that. And it could also,
Right.
I'm going to move out of my house by the time I get a paid work experience. I want to live independently, and identifying how to get a roommate. So it can be really, really complex, but
Yeah.
it can be really, really simple. But what it needs to reflect is what the student really wants. So,
Carrie, she is
yeah.
actually, I just wanted to elaborate on her question here because she actually indicated a few more things that she's
Okay.
really looking more toward for anxiety and being socially anxious to ask the teacher for help and not understand material being taught, or the other one, examples about ADHD and anxiety. So again, I think it goes back to understanding your disability and how it affects you. So depending on the age of the student, I think that, when I do this, it makes me anxious. So, or when certain things happen in the classroom, I can get anxious, but I will learn how to go to the teacher or how to ask for a break before it gets too bad. Like you learning the signs of how the anxiety comes on, and then saying, I need to have a break. Can I walk? Can I take a walk? Something along those lines. Do you agree?
Yeah, so it may start in the younger years where you're talking about anxiety and ADHD, where they have somebody who can, who sort of has eyes on them, and they can notice when they're becoming dysregulated, and they understand what their triggers. It may be something as simple as tapping their pencil on the desk before they become dysregulated. So in that respect, you would write goals about being open to the invitation of somebody asking for a break, or saying, I recognize you're doing this. Do you need a break? And so being open to that invitation, and then helping that student to identify what a break looks like for them. So for some students, it's something as simple as, bringing a note down to the office, or refilling their water bottle at the water fountain, or, if gym space is available, like for Sammy, she's 12, gym space is available after lunch. So they give her the opportunity halfway through the day to go into the gym and literally run a couple laps around the gym in order to help her to be more activated for the rest of her day. And then as they get older, you would move those goals and you would try to push the envelope a little bit to where they're identifying where their anxiety is building, what tools they want in their toolbox. So they're identifying the accommodations and modifications that they want to be able to access, and how are they going to access those. So for some, it might be that they just have a break card on their desk, and they just have to show the teacher the break card, and they can, they're independent. The teacher knows where they're going. They know where they're going. They can walk out of the room. For some, it's sign language. For some, it's going to be just raising their hand and saying, can I get a drink of water? And the teacher already knows, because they've read their IEP and that's been communicated, that that's their indication for the need a break, so that they're not feeling different. And so that the teacher's not denying it, because they understand that that's the student's way of asking for a break. So you get more complex as you build up, but it can really be quite simple in the early years. And then as they get older, you work towards them owning that a little bit more.
So Elizabeth has a comment about how she does this with her, daughter. She says, with the young ones and some that are not able to attend, I use a photo of my daughter and remind the team she's the reason we're here and that we need to focus goals around her. I also have her come in at the end to say thank you. We tried in the beginning, but it caused her issues. This is something for younger parents who want to start getting the idea that their child should be included. Yeah, that's why we had said, I totally agree, Elizabeth, in the beginning, they don't have to stay for long. It may just be come in for a little while and then leave, and understanding that everyone is meeting. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we hear from parents that there are young adults in high school that don't know they have IEPs. And that doesn't help them in the long run, even though we as parents are trying to protect them. So yeah, having them come in the beginning when they're younger, just to say hi or thank you or whatever it is, and then leaving, and then build on that as they age. I agree. That's a good point.
Dawn, there's a question from, I believe, Tanya.
So I see her questions and we did answer some of them. Is there another one?
I saw another one after Elizabeth's comment.
Oh.
She asked, are the schools required to facilitate?
Oh, I answered that.
employment?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
she's just asking, I'm sorry, I answered that to her directly, but didn't voice the question. Thank you for your transition goals regarding employment opportunities. Are the schools required to facilitate these employment opportunities? So yeah, and that's a, yes, they are. If that's the post-secondary goal, then they should be providing employment internships. And if you need more information on that, we have a lot of information. Yes, Karen mentioned DVRS. Yep, that's an option as well. That's information that we have a lot of information on that on our website. And we also facilitate a workshop in person on transition from school to adult life, and we talk a lot about that.
So the other thing it's important to note is at the age of 16, the school is required to ask the parents and the individual if they would like this school to invite Voc Rehab to the IEP meeting. And
Yes.
Parents can say no, but Voc Rehab is the opportunity for individuals with disabilities to really get connected to employment opportunities.
Yes.
And then some Voc Rehabs will start pre-employment skills at the age of 14. And parents can say to the district that they'd like to get in touch with vocational rehabilitation counselors in their state, and the school has to provide that to them to start some pre-employment skills. So in the pre-employment skills differ from state to state, but it would be as simple as looking up your vocational rehabilitation and or working with your school to work with vocational rehabilitation to see what's available for your child. But the school is mandated to work with your Voc Rehab.
So Tanya's saying, do you mean by post-secondary that child still has an IEP after she's 18? So if you have a student in high school in transition, and there's several goals that could be, they're either going to go to post-secondary education, so some sort of college program, whether that's a certificated or a degree program. They're going to go directly into employment after high school, or they're going to stay in school till 21. If they're going to go directly into employment after high school and not stay till 21, they should be receiving employment experiences in high school. Even if they're staying in till 21, they should still be receiving employment experiences in high school. Either way. So, and that's, again, those are transition issues, and your transition plan should reflect what that post-secondary goal is, and everything within that plan should be guiding to that ultimate goal after high school. And
so
Tanya,
your IEP,
go ahead, Carrie.
Your IEP ends when your public schooling experience ends, and it can go all the way up to the age of 21. So when you either graduate high school or leave high school because you've aged out, that's when your IEP and your protections under IDEA end. Voc Rehabilitation does not have an age limit. So you can continue your work with Voc Rehab as long as you have a plan with them and you're working with them and the supports are needed. So Voc Rehab goes through ever. There's no end date on Voc Rehab. So you can start by working with Voc Rehab in your schools, and then you can continue to work with them outside of school if you're going right into employment. If you're going into post-secondary education, so if they're exploring some college experiences, it's important to note that they are no longer protected under IDEA either. IDEA is just for public education. College experiences is private education. What you need to do is have a 504 plan, and we always recommend interviewing the colleges and their disability offices, because some colleges are better than others at providing services for individuals with disabilities, and you want to make sure that you're attending one that has a great disability office.
And Tanya, I just wanted to mention too, on that website that I gave earlier where you can find the recorded webinars, we have a transition guide on that website, which is very comprehensive. It has a lot of information in it. So take a look at that, and that will help you with some of your questions. If you still can't find information on your questions, I'm putting my email in the chat box. So you could always email me and I can refer you to whatever you need information on. You're welcome. So we're at 1 o'clock. I don't want to go too much past this because it's webinars are to only be an hour. But what we do have here is the Maine's website, Maine Parent Federation's website, and phone number. And I provided my SPAN website on the in the chat box. But I can tell you, Rosalind, can you provide our phone? I don't have the phone number off the top of your head. Can you put that? Because we do have a warm line on our website. We have a warm line in the office. So if you have any questions, or if you need help with a meeting or whatever it may be, just call our office and say you need to speak with someone. You need some assistance with your child's IEP, and someone will call you back and help you with more information. Rosalind's going to put the phone number in the chat box for you. There you go. She's got the warm line right there. So again, before we close, I want to ask if you could please complete the evaluation. What I'm also going to do is send the evaluation link through the Eventbrite. You registered in Eventbrite, so you'll get it through that as well, with a recording for once I get the recording, that will be listed there as well. So keep an eye out for part 3 of this series. And thank you for attending. Thank you, Dylan and Carrie, for collaborating on this. We, the same team, will be in part 3. We are going to actually have a couple other people helping us out as well. So, and then I also want to wish everybody a very happy, healthy holiday season and Happy New Year.
Thanks,
so thank you for attending. Oops, is there one more question? No. Thank you. You're welcome, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us.